The rain had already soaked through my sneakers by the time my sister answered the door. I had been standing on her porch for 2 minutes. I counted 60 seconds for the first ring, another 60 after the second. I heard her footsteps inside, heard the pause before she opened it, heard the small calculation happening behind the door before she finally turned the handle. Monica looked at me the way you look at something unexpected on your porch. Not frightened. Just inconvenienced. Her eyes went to the duffel bag at my feet. Then to my face. Then, briefly, past me to the street, as if checking whether anyone could see us. "Rebecca," she said. Not warmly. Just identifying me. "I just need a week," I told her. I had rehearsed this on the drive over, kept it short because I knew too many words would give her more things to argue with. "My first paycheck clears Friday. I just need somewhere to sleep until then." She folded her arms. "I have kids," she said. "I can't bring chaos into this house." Chaos. The word landed somewhere quiet and deep in my chest. I stood there in the rain, holding the last of my belongings, being called chaos by my own sister. She stepped back from the door. Not dramatically. Not with shouting or tears or anything that might have suggested she was wrestling with the decision. She just took one step back into the warmth of her house and began closing the door in the calm, deliberate way of someone completing a task. "Monica." The door clicked shut. Not slammed. Just closed. Carefully, evenly, the way you close a door when you want to make sure the latch catches. I stood there for a moment. Rain running down the back of my neck, pooling in my sneakers, tapping on my jacket in a rhythm that seemed too ordinary for how still I felt inside. I knocked once more. One soft knock, more reflex than hope. The porch light turned off. That detail, the light going off, is the one I still think about. Not the words she used. Not the expression on her face. The light going off, which meant she had walked back to her evening and left me standing in the dark outside a house I had visited 100 times. I picked up my bag. I walked back to my car. I sat there for a while without starting it. Long enough to feel the full shape of what had just happened. Long enough to understand that the person I had believed would be there, wasn't. Let me take you back, because this story didn't begin on that porch. It began the way most quiet disasters begin, with ordinary things happening in the wrong order, in the wrong month, one on top of another until the floor you thought was solid turned out to be paper. My sister refused to help me when I was homeless. Months later, she showed up at my front door. "My name is Rebecca Nolan. I am 32 years old. I am not reckless or irresponsible. I was a person who hit a bad stretch at the worst possible time, the kind of stretch that doesn't look dramatic from the outside but leaves you standing on a porch in the rain, knocking at a door that won't open. My sister Monica had the life that looked right from every angle. Neat house, stable husband, 2 kids, neighbors who waved hello. She had always been the one who had it together. I had always been the one still figuring it out. Neither of those things made me deserving of what happened on that porch. But understanding how we got there starts long before the rain, with 3 ordinary disasters that arrived too close together to survive comfortably. Growing up, Monica was the daughter everybody pointed at. She got the grades, the trophies, the teachers who remembered her name years later. She never caused scenes. She never needed extra explaining. She made our parents look like they had done everything right. I was not a bad kid. I wasn't in trouble. I wasn't cruel or difficult. But I was less polished than Monica in visible ways. I changed what I wanted more often. I asked more questions. I didn't walk into rooms already knowing how to make them like me. So the dynamic settled early. Monica was the success, I was the potential. It was never said out loud, but it lived in every conversation, every comparison, every moment someone mentioned her accomplishments in a way that left a small, particular silence. I grew up believing I could close that gap if I worked hard enough. For a long time, I did work hard. I built a career in logistics coordination. I found apartments I liked. I lived a real, independent life. Then, in one very ordinary year, 3 things happened in the wrong order. The first thing was the layoff. Our company had been showing strain for a while, everyone who paid attention knew it. But I was in a department that consistently delivered, so I had believed the cuts would land elsewhere. They didn't. On a Tuesday in October, my manager called me into a meeting I hadn't been invited to and walked me through a severance package prepared without my knowledge. 12 weeks of pay. A box for my things. I drove home feeling strangely calm, because I had savings. Not enormous savings, but enough. 3 months of runway. Time to find something new. What I hadn't calculated was how hard it is to find a new position when the economy is tightening and everyone else let go on that same Tuesday is applying for the same roles. The weeks passed. The interviews came slowly. The savings shrank in the exact, predictable way a fixed number shrinks when you keep subtracting from it. I adjusted my budget, cut every luxury, watched my balance drop to where I was doing arithmetic in my head every time I bought groceries. I still believed I had a floor. I did not yet understand that the floor was also moving. The second thing was the apartment. My landlord had owned the building for 22 years. He was a quiet man who fixed things promptly and left people alone. I had rented from him for 3 years without a real problem. Then he sold the building. The letter from the new management company arrived on a Wednesday. Effective 30 days from the date of the letter, my rent would increase by $430 per month. I did the math standing at my mailbox. The new rate was above what I could carry even when employed. At that moment, 9 weeks unemployed, it was impossible. 30 days. 1 month to find somewhere else to go. I started making calls the same afternoon. Friends, acquaintances, anyone with a lead on a short-term rental or room. Most people were kind. Most didn't have anything. The rental market had been shrinking for 2 years. I searched every night. I toured 3 places I couldn't quite afford. I called my mother, who lived in a 1-bedroom apartment 4 states away. I did not call Monica yet. I was still trying to solve it myself. I had one more thing to try before I admitted I had run out of options. The third thing was the job offer. This one was good news, the only piece of good news in 3 months. A mid-sized company reached out through my network. Logistics manager role. Better title than my previous position, better salary. The kind of opportunity that made the previous 12 weeks feel like a detour rather than a failure. I accepted immediately. The start date was 3 weeks away. 3 weeks. I had 22 days between accepting the offer and receiving my first paycheck, and my apartment had already been vacated. I had moved everything into storage to be out by the deadline, assuming somewhere would come together before then. Nothing had. I had looked at extended stay motels and done the math on how long my savings would last. The number worked, barely, but would wipe out everything I had left. That was when I thought of my sister. She had a house. She had a guest room. I had slept in it twice before. I needed 1 week, maybe less. Just a couch. Just a bridge between now and Friday. I drove to Monica's house on a Thursday evening, in the rain, with 1 bag and a plan that felt simple and reasonable, until her porch light turned off. I spent the first night in my car. Not because the motel wasn't an option, it was always the option. I spent it in my car because I needed time to feel the full shape of what had just happened before I could move past it. So I sat in the parking lot of a 24-hour pharmacy 3 blocks from Monica's house, heat running to keep me warm, and I let it land. She called me chaos. She knew I had a job. She knew the paycheck was coming in 6 days. She knew I wasn't asking for money or any permanent commitment. 1 couch. 1 week. And she had turned off the porch light. Around midnight I drove to a roadside motel on the edge of the city. The kind of place with a flickering sign and carpet that smelled like decades of other people's hard times. I paid for 2 nights, sat on the edge of the bed in a room that was cold despite the wall heater, and made myself a promise. I said it out loud, alone in that room, because saying it out loud made it real. I am going to be okay. And then, I am never going to need anything from her again. Both of those things turned out to be true. My first day at the new job, I arrived 20 minutes early. I had slept 4 hours. Ironed my clothes using a damp towel because the motel had no iron. Eaten a granola bar in my car. I drove there with the focus of someone who understands that what happens in the next 8 hours matters more than usual. The office was on the 4th floor downtown. My new manager, a woman named Bridget, met me at reception and walked me around to meet the team. I shook hands and remembered names and asked questions and did everything right. Nobody looking at me that morning would have known I had slept in a motel with a broken wall heater. That was the point. That was the discipline. I have thought about that a lot since then, what it costs to walk into a room and perform normalcy when your actual life is sitting in a storage unit. But that discipline was also what saved me. Because from day one, the people around me saw someone reliable. Someone who showed up fully and did the work. I had almost nothing. But I showed up anyway, every single day, with everything I had. That reputation would matter more than I knew then. My first paycheck cleared on the Friday I had told Monica it would. I paid for another week at the motel. The second paycheck, 2 weeks later, I used for a deposit on a room in a shared house I found through an online listing. 3 other renters, a shared kitchen, 1 bathroom split between me and 1 other person. Not comfortable. But stable. I had an address. A key. Somewhere to set my bag down and know it would still be there when I came back. Monica did not reach out during this time. Not once. No call to ask if I had found somewhere to stay. No message checking if the job had started. I was not surprised. But I noticed. The absence of contact was its own kind of information, confirming what the door closing had already told me. I was not a priority. When I had been struggling, she had assessed the situation, calculated the inconvenience to herself, and walked back into her house. That is not a thing you forget. It doesn't make you bitter, exactly. But it makes you careful. It changes what you expect and who you rely on. I stopped expecting anything from Monica. I focused entirely on myself. The work saved me, in the most practical sense. The logistics manager role gave me somewhere to put all the focus I had been carrying with nowhere to deposit it. I was good at this kind of work. My team knew it within weeks. My manager Bridget noticed within a month. I reorganized a part of our intake process that had been creating backlogs for years. I improved 2 supplier relationships that had been strained before I arrived. Small things. Concrete things. The kind of progress that doesn't get announced but gets noticed. Outside work, I kept my life deliberately simple. I cooked most meals. I walked instead of driving when I could. I tracked every dollar not because I was anxious but because I had learned, in the hardest possible way, what happened when you stopped paying attention. My savings grew slowly at first, then faster. The anxiety that had been living in my chest since October began to lift, not all at once, but in the way fog lifts. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, until one morning you notice that something that used to feel impossible now just feels like an ordinary day. I let myself notice that. I let myself feel it. I had earned the right to. I moved into my own studio apartment 4 months after the motel. Genuinely small, 1 room that served as bedroom and living space, a kitchen that was really just a counter and 2 appliances, a bathroom with a shower that took 40 seconds to warm up. The radiator made noises at night that I learned to sleep through. But it was mine. That word carried weight I had not expected. Mine in a way the shared house had not been and the motel obviously had not been. I had a lease with my name on it. A key that belonged to no one else. The first evening I moved in, I sat on the floor. I didn't have furniture yet, with my back against the wall and a cup of tea I had made on my new little stove, and I looked at the room for a long time. I thought about the porch. About the light going off. I thought about the motel with the broken heater and the shared house where I could hear every conversation through the wall. I thought, I built this. Not with help from the person I asked, not with a safety net. I built this by showing up every day and making it one decision further. It wasn't much yet. But it was solid. And solid was everything. I did not tell my family about the hardest parts. My mother knew things had been difficult. I had told her I was going through a housing transition and starting a new job. Enough to reassure her without giving her enough to worry about. She was older and far away and there was nothing she could have done. Monica, I told nothing. She did not ask. As the months passed, there were family events, a cousin's birthday dinner in month 3, a video call at Christmas, where Monica and I were both present. She was warm toward me in the polished, surface-level way she was warm toward everyone. She did not mention the porch. I did not mention the porch. We moved around each other like two people who had silently agreed not to name the thing that existed between us. I watched her life through those interactions. The house looked the same. Her husband was present but quiet in a way I hadn't noticed before. The kids were fine, growing, cheerful in the oblivious way of children who don't yet read the adult air. I could not tell, from the outside, that anything was different for her. But I was paying attention in a way I hadn't been before. Something in me had learned to watch more carefully. 6 months after the night on the porch, my manager called me into her office. Bridget closed the door and asked me to sit. She had a folder on the desk but didn't open it right away. She looked at me for a moment the way people look at someone they are about to say something real to. "You have been carrying half this team," she said. I waited. She opened the folder. Inside was a job description for a senior logistics lead position, one level above mine, newly created. She said she had written it with me in mind. The increase in responsibility came with an increase in compensation that was, in her words, significant. She slid the folder across the desk. I read it carefully. The role was everything I would have asked for if someone had said, "Describe the next step in your career." "I'd like you to take this," Bridget said. 6 months earlier I had been sitting on the edge of a motel bed making promises to myself out loud because there was no one else to make them to. I thought about that moment. Then I looked at Bridget and said yes. The promotion changed the numbers in a way that finally felt real. Not just comfortable, stable. The kind where you stop doing mental arithmetic every time you check your balance. I paid off the last debt accumulated during the gap months. I rebuilt my savings to a level that felt like actual safety, not the edge of it. For the first time in almost a year, I let myself want something. Not something large. Not a car upgrade or a vacation. I wanted a home that felt permanent. A place I chose because I liked it, not because it was available and affordable and near the right bus. I started looking casually, then seriously. The market was still difficult, but I had a stable income, a clean credit picture I had worked hard to restore, and a clear sense of what I needed, something small, something mine, something I could lock from the inside and know would still be there every time I came home. 8 months after the night on Monica's porch, I found it. A small townhouse on the east side of the city. Older building. 2 floors. A narrow patch of yard and back. A quiet street. I put in the offer on a Tuesday. It was accepted by Thursday. The day I got the keys, I drove to the townhouse alone. I parked and sat in my car for a few minutes, not the way I had sat in the motel parking lot 11 months earlier, but with a completely different feeling. Then I got out, walked up to the front door, and unlocked it for the first time. The house was empty and smelled like paint and old wood and waiting. I walked through every room slowly. The small living room. The kitchen with the window looking onto the yard. The half bathroom near the back. Upstairs, the bedroom, the full bathroom, a second room already becoming a home office in my mind. I stood at the bedroom window and looked at the street below. 11 months. From rain on my neck and a porch light going off to a mortgage with my name on it and a door I could open and close on my own terms. The thought was not triumphant. I want to be clear about that. It was a plain, quiet fact settling into place alongside all the other facts of the past year. I had done this myself. No safety net. No one who opened their door. Just the work, and the discipline, and every small decision made one at a time. That was the whole truth. And it was enough. I had been in the townhouse 3 months when things began changing for Monica. My mother and I spoke every Sunday. She had always been a gentle source of family information. Not gossip, just someone who kept track of people and shared what she knew. In October she mentioned that Monica's husband Patrick had lost his position at the company he'd been with for 9 years. A restructuring. Half the department, gone. I said the right things. That's hard. I hope they have savings. I'm sure he'll find something. I did not say, I know exactly what that feels like in October. In November, my mother mentioned financial strain. They had pulled the girls from their private school. Talk of refinancing. In December, she mentioned carefully that Monica and Patrick were having a difficult time. That the stress was hard on everyone. I listened. I expressed appropriate concern. And I noticed something inside myself I won't pretend wasn't there, a small, quiet recognition. Not satisfaction at her difficulty. Not revenge. Just the plain acknowledgement that the world has a way of leveling things that human decisions sometimes refuse to. I let the feeling exist. Then I moved past it. The knock came on a Thursday evening in January. I had been home about an hour after work. Changed clothes, started something on the stove, opened a book I had been trying to reach for a week. The house was warm. 2 ordinary knocks. I went to the door. There was a moment, maybe 2 seconds, of pure blankness as my brain tried to catch up to what my eyes were showing it. Monica. Standing on my porch. Her coat and scarf. Her hair not as perfectly arranged as usual. Her face doing something complicated I had never seen on it before, some mixture of shame, exhaustion, and fear that had settled into her features like weather. Behind her at the curb, a car idled. Through the window I could see shapes I recognized. Her daughter's. At her feet was a suitcase. I looked at the suitcase. I looked at her face. I looked at the suitcase again. 11 months collapsed in my chest into a single, wordless sensation that was not one feeling but many feelings happening at the same time. I breathed. I waited for her to speak. She spoke quietly. The confident voice I had known my whole life was still hers, the same pitch, the same rhythm, but the certainty was gone from it, the way heat leaves a room when the window has been open too long. Things got complicated, she said. She didn't dress it up. She told me what my mother had been quietly conveying over the previous months, but from the inside, Patrick had been unemployed for 3 months, savings ran out faster than expected, the mortgage company had sent the final notice, and they had run out of time. They had moved their things into storage that morning. Patrick was staying with a friend from work. She was asking if she and the girls could stay with me for a little while. A week, maybe 2. Just until they figured out next steps. She said, I didn't know where else to go. I stood in my doorway, and the rain from last January and the porch light going off were both very present in my body right then, not as anger exactly, but as a full-body memory that had been waiting without knowing it was waiting. I looked at my sister. I looked at the suitcase. I looked at the car with her daughter's shapes in the dark. For a long moment I didn't say anything. The wind was moving. Not raining yet. But the air had the cold weight of a night still deciding. Monica stood in that wind and she did not look away, which I respected. It would have been easy to look away. I thought about what she had said to me. I have kids. I'm not bringing chaos into this house. I thought about the motel. The shared house. The studio with the radiator. The first Sunday I sat on the floor of this townhouse drinking tea from my own stove in a home no one could take from me. I thought about what it had cost me to build this life. Not just money, choices, discipline, the long practice of trusting only myself when that was the only option available. And then I looked at Monica's daughters through the car window. 9 and 11 years old. Watching their mothers back with the careful attention of children who understand something important is happening but don't have words for what it is. They did not do this. They did not close any door. I looked at my sister. The decision formed in the space between one breath and the next, the same place where all real decisions form. I need you to say it, I told her. She blinked. Say what? What happened on your porch? In January. She looked at the suitcase for a moment. Then back at me. I know, she said. That's not the same as saying it. She was quiet. The wind moved. A car passed somewhere down the street. I turned you away, she said finally. Her voice was low and even, the voice of someone making themselves say something they have been not saying for too long. You needed help and I called you chaos and I closed the door. Then I didn't call to check if you were okay. I went back to my life and let you handle it. She met my eyes. That was wrong, she said. I knew it was wrong when I did it. I have known it every day since. I stood with that for a moment. The honest version, without deflection or justification. It was not an apology that fixed anything. Some things don't get fixed by apologies, they get acknowledged, which is different and sometimes more important. I had needed to hear it said out loud. Now I had. I stepped back from the door. Come in, I said. Monica picked up her suitcase. She walked past me into the house and I watched her take in the room, the furniture I had found at second-hand shops and refinished on weekends, the bookshelves filled slowly over months, the warm lamplight. She stopped in the middle of the living room. I went back to the front door and walked down the porch steps to the car. Monica's daughters, Nadia and Fern, 9 and 11, looked up at me with wide, careful eyes. I opened the door. Come inside, I said. It's warm. Nadia scrambled out immediately, which was typical for her. Fern moved more slowly, watching me with her mother's kind of watchfulness. I put a hand briefly on each of their shoulders as they passed me on the steps. Whatever had happened between their mother and me was not their story. They were children. They were cold. I carried Fern's bag inside. Monica was still standing in the living room when I came back. Looking at the room like she was calculating something she hadn't expected to have to calculate. I put the bag down. I went to the stove to check what I had started cooking. We had to eat. That was the next thing. After the girls were settled. Sheets found, the spare room arranged, teeth brushed, a small orderly bedtime established in a house that had never had children in it, Monica and I sat at the kitchen table. She had water. I had tea. The house was quiet in the way old buildings get late in the evening, fully settled into themselves. We didn't fill the silence immediately. That was different. Growing up, Monica had always been quick to fill silence, she was good at managing the emotional temperature of a room. Sitting without doing that seemed to cost her something. How long have you had this place? She asked eventually. About 3 months. She nodded slowly. Mom told me about the promotion, she said. She didn't tell me about this. I didn't tell her yet. A pause. I didn't know what you went through, she said. After that night. I told myself you were fine. That you had the job coming and you'd figure it out. I did figure it out, I said. I just had to do it alone, in harder circumstances than I needed to. She nodded. Neither of us said anything for a while after that. The tea cooled. The house held us both. They stayed for 9 days. I will be honest, it was not seamless. Having 2 children in a space arranged for one person required constant small adjustments. Nadia left things everywhere in the enthusiastic, total way of a 9-year-old who doesn't yet understand why objects need homes. Fern was quiet and watchful, and cried once, softly, behind the door of the spare room. I sat outside without saying anything until it stopped and then asked if she wanted hot chocolate, which she did. Monica was careful with everything. She cooked when she could. She cleaned more than I asked. She stayed out of my way with a deliberateness that said she understood the weight of what she was asking. On the 5th day she got a call about an apartment. A 2-bedroom available at the end of the month. She came downstairs with the expression of someone who has just been given permission to exhale. "We have somewhere to go," she told me. I said I was glad. That evening Nadia asked me if I was her aunt. I said yes. She said she didn't really know me. I said that was true and that we could fix it if she wanted. She thought about it the way 9-year-olds think about real things, and said okay. That was not nothing. The last evening before they left, Monica and I sat at the kitchen table again. The girls were asleep. The house was quiet. She looked different from the woman who had arrived on my porch, not solved, not fixed, but less compressed. Like something had been carried too long and finally set down. "You built all of this yourself," she said. Not a question. "Yes," I said. She looked at the room. The shelves, the lamp, the table we were sitting at. All the small evidence of a life assembled one deliberate piece at a time. "I thought I was protecting my life when I closed that door," she said. "I thought I was being responsible." "I know. I was scared," she said. "Scared my life was too fragile to handle one more thing. And instead of saying that, I called you chaos and pretended it was principle. I had thought about what I would say if this moment ever came. I had imagined something sharp. Something that would close the wound cleanly. But sitting there, I didn't want sharp. I wanted true. The door is open now," I said. "That's what matters to me." She nodded. Her eyes were wet but she didn't cry. We sat together in the warm quiet of a house I had built from nothing, 2 sisters on the other side of the hardest year, finally in the same room without any door between us.